Aye, Shepherd's Pie. Greetings from the Philippines. Welcome back to the channel for a walk and a talk. I want to have a little chat today about something that I touched on in a previous video, and I'm going to make no apologies for that. I have spoken about relationships quite a bit recently. It's not the direction the channel's going in. I'm not going to profess or claim or try and become a relationship guru. But as I said in the previous video, I think it's important because a lot of people who come here, some will say the vast majority of single men that come to the Philippines, they come in search of a Filipina. And these are the people who I am hoping to talk to today, just to give them a word to the wise and to pose a question to them. And before I pose that question, I'm just going to pray see why I am posing it, because it's a very subjective thing. Now, I have seen countless people on YouTube channels over the years before I came here, when asked why they came to the Philippines and why they were looking for a Filipina or why they were happy with a Filipina, it's because they were looking or they wanted a traditional relationship, a traditional marriage. And that always brought a wry smile to my face, because I thought, what do they mean by a traditional relationship? What does that mean to them? Because I think it's very subjective, and but you hear it a lot, and it will mean different things to different people. And generally the people who say that's what they're coming here for, that's what they like about the Philippines, have invariably had unsuccessful relationships in the West, and are very disenchanted about Western women. So they have come looking for a traditional Filipino for a traditional relationship. Now, another thing I've had in the comments increasingly over the last few months is suggestion that some people are real men and some people aren't real men. And the people who profess to be real men in the comments generally come over as whiny little bitches. Because again, what a real man is subjective. I've never quite known what people mean when they profess to be a real man, when they claim they're a real man and someone else isn't. Personally, I don't think real men troll or try and be provocative in statements in YouTube. But I do have my own opinions, or can't think what the term is now, my own views on what a real man is traditionally, and what my perspective of what might make someone a real man, or so we say, more manly than others. So that's what I want to address today. And I say I'm not talking to the people I just referred to, the ones in the comments. I couldn't give two shits what they say, you know. I generally respond to comments. I think I respond to at least 95% plus, because I like interacting with people. I don't bother with the trolls and the arseholes, you know, the ones who are making great statements about being real men and all the rest of that shit. You know, I just delete them. Why give them the oxygen? Why give them the attention they crave? But anyway, I have the reason I have just prayseed all that is I want to ask the question to the people who are coming over here in search of a traditional relationship. Are you man enough for a traditional relationship? Are you a real man? Because if you're not, I think you're going to struggle in a traditional relationship over here. I really think you are, and I will explain why now. Because in my opinion, hello, what a lot of these people are looking for is what my mother refers to as a surrender wife. You know, hey, how you doing? Lots of kids around here. I think they're going to make it quite hard to vlog. Never seen it this busy, but then it is a Sunday. I am doing a vlog, yes. Are you cutting down a tree? There you go, look at that, cutting down. Good way to spend a Sunday. Don't know if you can see that. Some kids cutting down the trees. Anyway, yeah. I get the impression, try and get my train of thought back now, what they're basically looking for is a subservient wife who will basically let them be the man who makes the decisions, basically the man of the house. What he says goes. They won't tell him what to do. They won't nag him. He will make all of the decisions. That's what I assume they're craving, or what they think a traditional relationship is, what it means to them. But I wonder how many of them actually understand or appreciate the responsibility that comes with that. Because I, for one, I have never wanted a traditional relationship. I've never been in what I would call a traditional relationship. You know, I've always, both my wives, they were very independent. They had their own careers. You know, that's why we didn't have kids. You know, they were career-minded. I was career-minded in my business and things. You know, one of the reasons I'm with Ellen is I like the fact that she's independent. I like the fact that she wants to work. I like the fact that she, you know, doesn't want me to make all the decisions for her, doesn't want me to provide for her or expect her to cook my meals and things. You know, that's not what I've ever looked for. But there's nothing against people who are looking for that. You know, each to your own. You know, do whatever floats your boat. I've got no, you know, we're all different. What I'm going to suggest in this video, what we're talking about now, is I think there is a certain amount of responsibility that comes with a relationship like that. And judging by the number of comments you get from people saying they're just gold diggers, everyone wants money, they'll do you for this, they'll lie to you, they'll do all this, basically the disparaging remarks that you get from so many people in the comments, and disenchanted chaps who've come over here and it's all gone wrong. I think many of them haven't quite understood what comes with a traditional relationship, because my idea personally, and I think a lot of Filipinos will look at it that way, is they want a man who is the provider. A man who won't just make the decisions, he will provide for the family, whether that's the extended family or the immediate family. You know, he will put the family first. And to be honest, that is my view of what a traditional relationship is. You know, yeah, we go back, you know, many years. Your typical guy was the provider for the family. You know, in the UK, lots of women were housewives. They could afford to be. They cooked the meals. They, you know, did the washing, did the clothes, did the cleaning or whatever. The guy went out, he worked. He was the breadwinner. You know, that was part of his contract. You know, he had responsibilities. He had children. Hopefully, or the idea is he put those children and his wife first, you know. And because he did that, they looked after him. Seem to get a hell of a lot of people over here now at this moment in time, the ones that do come over here, who don't think it should work that way. They don't quite see it that way. They want the traditional relationship, but they don't want the responsibility that comes with it. And as I say, one of the reasons I don't want a traditional relationship is I don't want the responsibility. I'm not saying you should. A lot of people will say in the comments, are you saying you should pay for this, you should pay for that? No, I'm not. I'm not saying any of those things. I've never been in one of those relationships, apart from a very short time. Anyway, it's a long story in Thailand, and that's why I would never go back to it again. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about you and what you're looking for. And that's what a Filipino wants, your typical Filipino, I would go as far as to suggest. I think I'm right on this. You know, they're looking for a man who puts the family first. And by that, as I say, the immediate family or the extended family or whatever, and provides for them. That's why I think a lot of it, you know, they'll say it's financial, a lot of people on the channel, that's why they tend to like the older men over here, or they tend to go with older men. Because they think they're more responsible, they think they're more financially stable, they think they put their wild days behind them. They're less likely to go off with another woman and leave the family to fend for itself. It's not always the case, but that's the generalisation. That is the impression I get over the years that I've been here. But I do wonder how many of the guys who crave this traditional relationship are actually up for that. You know, a lot of them seem to want to pay an allowance and then basically put themselves first. You know, you see them in the bars, drinking, by themselves all day, or with a Filipina who says nothing and just plays on the phone. She's just a sidekick. You know, in their minds, they are providing because they're paying X amount of money. And by paying that amount of money, however large or small it is, they're in a traditional relationship. I don't think that ever was what a traditional relationship was it? I mean, that might be your version of it. Now, the point is, if you come over and do that, and a lot of people do it, I don't know how happy you're going to be, and I don't know how long the relationship is going to last. You often see people out, you know, usually with age gaps, sitting in restaurants, having meals and things, and the partner never says a word. They never say anything to each other. They're just looking on their mobile phones. They don't laugh, they don't joke, they don't talk. And the first time you see them, you might think, well, maybe they're just having some time apart today. But then you'll see them. I know some people over here, not in my close circle of friends, you see them out a few times, small place, Dumagetti, and they never seem to interact. And you'll go down the bars and you'll hear people sitting there lamenting, complaining that the wife wants money for this and that, and he's told her he's not going to do this, he's not going to, why should he do this, why should he do that? As he sat there spending the day, spending his money drinking. Now again, I'm making no moral judgments on this. You know, the strong man and the waterfall channel their own path, you know. You do what you want to do. Just saying, if you're going to come over here and you're going to put all your eggs in one basket and you're going to come in search of this traditional relationship, I would spend a bit of time thinking about what that could potentially involve and what is going to be expected of you. Because if you think it's just going to be about paying X amount of money and that's it, I'd suggest, and then you just do what you want to do, then I would suggest, humbly, that's not a traditional relationship, that's a business relationship. You know, I saw it a lot in Thailand. I know we're talking about the Philippines, but you would see guys out who drunk all day, and again, I've got no problem with that. If I was there, I was probably drinking with them. I don't mind that, but you know, you do what you want to do. A man's got to do what a man's got to do. But they seem totally oblivious of the fact when they're complaining that their Thai girlfriend's moaning about this, or she wants money for this or money for that, and they've turned around and said they're not going to do it because they can't afford it, or they've given this, they've given that. You know, I often thought, you know, what do you think they think when you're spending the day drinking? When you're going out and spending 2,000-3,000 baht a day on your own pleasures, but then you're saying you can't afford to give 2,000 or 3,000 or whatever it is to the family, then of course they're not going to be happy about it. Because as far as they're concerned, you're a selfish prick. Now, you may well be, or you may not be. You know, again, I'm not making any moral judgments. Just saying, if you're in a relationship, you need to see it, or try and see it, from your partner's point of view. And invariably, that's the way they'll see it. In typical Filipino, sorry, Thai, I've gone to Thailand now, but it's the same thing. It's a contractual relationship everywhere in Asia, really. You know, if you didn't have the money, or the Filipino didn't think you had the money, or the Thai didn't think you had the money, and you weren't going out drinking, and you weren't spending so much of your income on what they perceive as luxuries, then it's very unlikely you would get a raw deal about it. Because if you genuinely can't afford it, or you can't do it, or you know, they think you're putting the family first, they're gonna be quite accepting of that, on the whole, in my experience, in my opinion, for what it's worth. But yeah, you know, I know a few. I mean, a classic example. You know, to me, that's what a real man is. In the sense, you don't want to have don't have to have a traditional relationship. I'm not going to name many people now, but I've got a couple of friends, close friends, over the last couple of years. You know, they have ended up in situations where they have ended up supporting extended members of the family, financially to quite a great extent, but not because they're simps. Just because there has been a family crisis, something has genuinely happened. We're not talking about a sick water buffalo or something like that. Something catastrophic has happened, and those members of the family have needed supporting, and they have stepped up and done it. Now, to me, that's a real man. Now, a lot of the so-called real men in the comments will say that's just simping, blah, 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 blah. A lot of bullshit, mate. It would be simping if the relationship started off like that. It'd be simp if they were basically, you know, letting... But again, it's subjective. I don't know why I'm using this simp term again. But I think you know what I mean, or what I'm trying to say is, I mean, there's a huge difference between going in, bending over, accepting everything, never complaining, an open checkbook, and all the rest of that stuff. No one is suggesting you do that. It's not the, you know, it wouldn't be wise. And if you're foolish enough to do that, then you know you accept what happens. It's a huge difference between doing that and then stepping up when something needs to be done. I would call it, the expression is manning up. That's a huge difference. And again, if you are going to come over here and look for a traditional relationship, hopefully you'll get it right. Hopefully you'll find the same, you know, the right kind of person who isn't a gold digger, isn't scamming you, isn't just after you for your money. But if you do that, and even if you do that, and even if, you know, you're lining all your ducks up in a row, a time may come where something happens and someone dies, or there's an accident, or there's an illness or something like that, when you might be expected to man up. Which is why I asked the question, are you man enough for a relationship like that? And as I said before, man's got to not make any judgments whether you do or you don't. I'm just saying, these are the things that you need to consider before you come here, because there's a strong possibility, thankfully it hasn't really happened to me in my time in Asia, but things can happen, you know, and they do not have the same support structure over here. There aren't care homes, you know, they don't have the greatest health care. You know, people can basically starve on the streets here. And if you're going to look for a traditional relationship, if you're going to, you know, come over here and marry and do all those things, then you know, you can potentially find yourself in situations that you would not find yourself in the West. You know, in Britain, it's unlikely you're going to suddenly find yourself in a situation where two of your wife's younger siblings are potentially going to end up in the street and starve to death, or, you know, someone needs an operation. If you don't pay for it, they're just going to end up dying. You know, they don't happen in Western countries, but they happen over here. It does happen in Southeast Asia. You can find yourself in that situation. And in that situation, you're very likely to be the only person in the family circle with the funds to be able to do that. And again, I've gone around in circles. It's a bit windy. I don't know if this video is going to come out or not. Should have come out earlier before the wind came on. But I'm just saying, you need to think about stuff like that. You know, are you man enough for that kind of relationship? In terms of manning up, if need be. Or more importantly, do you actually want that kind of relationship? Because you can come over here and have a great life as a single guy. You can take a bit longer and find an independent woman. You know, you can have relationships which are not too dissimilar to the West. I mean, there are going to be, obviously, there's going to be language and cultural barriers, but you don't have to throw yourself into a relationship where you are with the housewife, you're paying housekeeping or whatever it is and all the rest of that stuff, and you know what you say goes and all the rest of it. You know, you are the man of the house, you are the breadwinner, the provider, the lord maker, you know, the governor, as we'd say in England. Because with that comes responsibility. And I do think, well, I know over the years, there are a hell of a lot of people you'll meet over here who aren't up for that, who aren't ready for that responsibility, who are not man enough. I mean, that's the thing, a lot of these guys say, well, claim to be men and this because they go out and they do this and they drink and they... That's kid stuff, to be honest with you. You know, the way I look at it. I mean, that is not... that is a selfish way of living. Now, I'm a very selfish person in many ways. I'm hedonistic. You know, this is why I've avoided traditional relationships, as they say. A lot less so now as I get older, and I would hope wiser. But, you know, if you are going to live that lifestyle, you need to be cognizant of what, you know, that's not being a real man. It might be your perception of it. No one tells me what to do. I'll drink as late as I want and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's not really. So I think to me, a man, a real man, is the kind of guy who, on the Titanic, women and children first. You know, that would be an example of a real man to me. Not necessarily like, you know, nobody tells me what to do. I have as many beers as I like. I'm not paying for this, I'm not paying for that. But as I say, I've gone on a bit too long now, but then again, if you watch the channel, I always do, don't I? It's what I do. I waffle. I lose my train of thought, but it's what I like to do. But yeah, as I say, I'm making no judgments here. I'm not saying you should have a traditional relationship, not look for a traditional relationship, not saying you should pay, you know, an allowance to your girlfriend or your wife. I'm not saying you should support the extended family. I'm just saying it's a good idea before you find yourself in a serious relationship over here, or a marriage, heaven forbid, that you don't just say to the person, oh, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm not going to do, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, and expect them to still agree with you a couple of years into the relationship, because invariably they won't, because things change. Right, I've discussed that in other videos. You got to ask yourself, am I ready for this? Am I up to that responsibility? Do I really want this? And what am I prepared to do? How far will I go? Anyway, here endeth the lesson in a roundabout way. Because I do think if you think about that and you're honest with yourselves, it could save you a bit of, could save you some woes in the future. Because you need to be realistic about the person you are. A lot of people come over here, they think they're going to reinvent themselves and everything, you know, and a lot of people do reinvent themselves, they're Navy SEALs and all this shit that they come out with. You know what I mean? It's very easy to think, right, things are going to be different now, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get that, I'm going to get this. But there's nothing free in life. You know, the ones who seem to think that they're going to get fed grapes and, you know, palms over their heads and that, you know, like the old Romans on the sage longs. Yeah, you can get that over here, you can get that over there, but it comes at a cost, financial and emotional. But anyway, there you go. I might not upload this video. God, I've gone round in circles, both literally and metaphorically speaking. But yeah, I'm just saying, you know, ask yourself, are you man enough for the Philippines? Because if you want a traditional relationship, there are a lot of women over here who will be happy to give you a traditional relationship, but they are looking for a traditional man. A traditional man who puts the family first. And if you're not ready to do that, then there is a good possibility that the relationship will end in tears and you will end up like one of these, let's call them simps. They like calling everyone else simps. These simps in the comments. Women are just after this, are just after that. You can't trust them. They're all scammers, blah, 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 blah. But I don't want to be too negative. The good news is, if you do stick to your part of the contract, if you do put the family first, if you do provide, there's a very, very strong possibility, probably higher than any other country in the world, that you could be blissfully happy for the end of your days, and your Filipina will treat you like a king and look after you in your dying days. Because trust me, they are very loyal over here. Yes, there will be exceptions, but your typical Filipina, they will put up with a lot of shit. They will from a guy, a lot more than they will in the West. And they're a lot more likely to stick with you during tough times than your typical Thai woman is. So it's not all doom and gloom. You can get what you're looking for if that's what you're looking for. Just saying to you, you know, a word in your shell. Are you sure that's what you really want? And are you sure you're prepared to do what's required to make it work? Because that is the reality. Are you man enough for the Philippines? Anyway, I'm going to end it now. Can't think what else to say, and I'm back at my scooter, so I'm going to head home. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed, it would be fantastic if you did. But whether you do, whether you don't, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe and be lucky.